Hello and well met. This is Founder Leyron with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. This is video number 2 of the Map Tools 101 series. Today we're going to cover some of the terrain occluders. I want to go over that. And if you notice, the map will be zoomed in. So we won't see the entire map because we're actually focusing in on one type of tool. And I do not want to expand the map too much so that you won't be able to see what's going on. So I'm going to leave this expanded and allow you to see what I'm actually doing on the map. So for the map, I have a token on here, in which this token is on the battle map. It's an NPC. I'm actually using Angela Maps, her token, as the avatar. But I'm going to be putting the occluders on this tree over here on the right, and some best practices and that sort of thing. So let's get going. Right now, I'm in the line of sight tool, and then over here in the bottom beneath that are your different tools. You have selection, line, rectangle. What I've seen in the past is people will left click and drag and make this big circle. And there's no problem with that. The only thing is that it really doesn't really look like a tree at this point when your token is close up to it. And on top of that, it doesn't really look natural. So it's really not an ideal situation in regards to creating these shapes. So I'm going to hit Control Z to get out of that. And that will erase it, because that kind of backs you up to where you started. And the next thing is I want to make sure that I'm in the terrain tool and the line tool. And what I'm going to do is click around on these top boughs, because I don't want to cover the entire tree. You don't have to go right up to the very edge. I'm just going to cover up this very top area, and that will basically show or signify that the stump and maybe some of these upper branches are blocking vision or you can't see up there. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of click around casually. You don't have to do anything specific or anything too professional looking. I mean, it's just basically putting a type of occluder in there to represent this big tree standing there. And that's pretty much it. And if you look over here on the right, you'll see that this is actually looks a little bit more natural instead of putting a big round circle or going all the way around all these little edges. And if you don't like the position of these after you do this, when you're done with all of your terrain occluders, you go back to the selection tool, which is the arrow. You can just slightly adjust these points if you don't like where they're at. So maybe you got a little overzealous, or maybe you didn't cover enough, whatever the situation might be. And the other tip is right now I actually have all this turned on. So this is what it would look like. And when you move your token around, you can see what's going on here. And that's why I have the token on here. So I'm able to visualize and see what's happening in regards to the map. So that's important to kind of have something to check things out with. So I have a token on here that's from the combat tracker, and she has some torchlight, but she's also looking at the line of sight occluder. So you have to turn these on to check them. So that's what it looks like from the player view. So she's got a torch on, and then she's looking at the tree, and there's the shadow from the occlusion. But if I turn these off, this is what I'm working in for the mode. So that's why I wanted to show you that. The next thing is when you go to the line of sight tool, if let's say you wanted to move this whole thing over a little, instead of redrawing this, in the selection tool, I can double click on any point and click on any point and left click and hold and kind of drag this around. So you can take this whole thing and do it as a shape. So that's a technique that you can use. And then again, if you single click, that's only going to affect one point, and you can use that to drag these individual points. So that's just the main part of doing these segments, is that you don't have to do everything perfectly. And if you need to make adjustments, wait until you're done putting all your line work in, and then actually go back and make some adjustments if you want. But really, you don't really have to be perfect with terrain. One of the things you want to avoid is a lot of points. So you don't want a ton of points in here, like 50,000 little dots, because that's what really causes the lag, and it causes Fantasy Grounds kind of slow down. And when you're sharing that across the network, if you have a person that has a slower computer or they don't have very good bandwidth, that's going to cause that lag that you see often in maps. So if you have a huge map and too many data points on it, that's generally one of the culprits. So Fantasy Grounds developed a tool to combat that, because they realized in the early days they used to put more data points. They realized how much of a performance hit that had on the actual maps and such. So there is a tool called Simplify Selected Occluders. So if you double click on any certain groups of dots here, all these are selected, you can click this Simplify Occluder button, this down arrow over here in the menu, and that will take out some of the redundant points that you don't need. You may only have to do that once or twice, but don't overdo it or it'll take away points that you probably need. But if you have a large cavern system, I would recommend that you do that because caverns tend to have a lot more data points. Those seem to be the ones that take the biggest performance hit because straight lines are a lot less dots. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, you can make double-tiered areas of terrain. So let's just say that you were going to climb the tree and you're going to climb up here. So what I would do is do another occluder on the outside of this so you can kind of do like a tiered view. So let's say that Angela was going to climb the tree and I would only reveal the sections that she has cleared. So there'll be this first group of boughs and then the second group is when she gets towards the top. So you could do something like that. So I'm going to go back to the line tool. I'm in the line of sight and in the terrain tool. And I'm going to do something similar. I'm just going to click around on these points. And you notice I'm not going right to the edge. I'm trying to stay within a certain area so that it doesn't block all the artwork and all the niceties of this tree. Because then if you have that set on there, you're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to see everything. So there's our second level. So if you had like a mesa or maybe you have a multi-leveled dungeon or something, you could do something like this to block the lighting until someone gets up there and they're able to see. So that's kind of a workaround, I guess, for not having height. So you can use that as a way to block the light and the level. So if you wanted to say that the second tier is where she would reach first, then you would reveal it, and then the third tier is when she got up to the top. So what I'm going to do is go back to play mode, which is the mode that you need to be in to engage with tokens. So if you're having trouble moving the token right now, it's because you're in the editing mode. You need to go over to play mode, and let's turn on the line of sight so we can see what's going on. I'll reveal that. So I'll go ahead and open it, and that will show that part of this layer. And then when she gets up to the very top, then I'll open up that. And what that does is it keeps the shadow over here from being blocked. So it means that she's sitting basically on top of the tree. She can see all around. So that's kind of how you would do that with other levels. So if I do this in tiers, it will kind of just show in certain groups. So that's kind of what that kind of does. It doesn't always work the way you think. And when you do put those kind of layer of sophistication on there, you're going to have to kind of remember that. So if she climbs up the top, then she will be able to see beyond this tree, provided that she has the vision, or in this case, her torch. But that's another way you can handle elevation, sort of. It's kind of a workaround. It's not perfect, but it is a way to do that. The other thing is, if you notice that if you want the occluder or in this case, a terrain layer to be a part of the map or connected to an object, you're going to make sure that you select the layer. I don't have to, but I did that in case I want to move it. So that's also a part of this layer. So that's because it was selected. Then as you start closing these, it's going to block more and more of the terrain. So, and then you got to be careful because you got to remember which one of these is which. You have them stacked up like that, they're really hard to tell. But that's basically what I wanted to show you about terrain tools. So terrain can be used creatively to create these sort of lines and tiers, or you can just use it to kind of block some of the tree. But you want to be able to see some of this tree. As you can tell, as I got it further out, it's harder to tell that it's tree because you don't really want to cover this entirety of the tree. You just want maybe the very center. And that's just a tip or a suggestion. You can do it however you want. But one of the things you want to try to avoid is basically to not include all this stuff in your occluders, because it's going to defeat the purpose of it, and it's really not going to show the terrain very well. So if I go and double click on these points and I hit the delete key, I can delete that entire segment. And here, same thing. I can come there and delete that, or I can double click there and delete that. So that's how you can delete those lines, or you can hit Control Z if you haven't gone too far out. I don't know how many undos you can do, probably 10 or so. And then it becomes a nightmare when it comes to showing this to your friends. So anyways, that's the tips I have for today. Hopefully that helps you. I'm not here to show the entire map. I'm just trying to show the actual tool and how it works. So take care, everyone. Have a good evening. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.